Hello, beautiful teachers, and welcome to another Vibrant Music Teacher Chat. This is the weekly show on YouTube where you get to hear about any news that's pertinent to private music teachers, and we also go into a special topic each week. And today we're talking about a special type of performance opportunity that I'm putting on in my studio. So I'm going to take you behind the scenes of planning it. Things I'm predicting will go well, and hopefully they will. It's on this Sunday. And yeah, just giving you the inside scoop on that. And I hope you'll find it fun. I hope you'll find it interesting. We were off last week, so welcome back, everybody. Right at the top of the show here, I wanted to mention that we may have to change the time of this show. So I would love your opinions, regular people who watch live. Hello. I appreciate you so much. I may have to change the time of the show. I definitely have to change it in January, maybe sooner than that. It kind of depends on a lesson situation I've got going on. So I try to avoid this as much as possible, but here's the question. Would you prefer earlier on Wednesday? So it would have to be 2 hours earlier on a Wednesday. 2 hours earlier than this on the same day. Or the same time as this, but on a Thursday. I'm guessing people will prefer that option, but I'm just giving you the options because I hate to move it, but at least if you can have some input on it, maybe we can make it suit as many people as possible. So if I have to move the show, which I probably do, 2 hours earlier on Wednesday or same time as this on Thursdays. Let me know in the chat. Some other bits of news. First of all, members who are watching, Vibrant Music Teaching members who are watching, I sent out an email yesterday about MTNA. So if you're not from the US or you're just not familiar, MTNA is a Music Teachers National Association, meaning national the US. And their conference is in March. And their next conference in March 2024 is going to be in Atlanta. So I'm going. And we're going to have a booth there. And a wonderful, wonderful woman from our team will be humaning the booth, looking after the booth for most of the day. And we need a couple of members to help out, just to cover her breaks and help out during the busy periods. In return for that, you can have a free ticket to the conference because we get passes as part of being an exhibitor. So if you would like a free ticket, if you'd like your ticket cost covered, and it's not cheap, guys. So if you're thinking of going, this is a good opportunity. We'll be giving out those 2 free tickets. We already have quite a few applications, but I'm leaving it open until next Wednesday. And then I'll draw from all those names, whoever's on the list, I'll draw 2 people out of that hat, as it were, metaphorical digital hat. And let you know if you can have one of those free tickets in exchange for helping us out at the booth and talking about VMT, which I hope is something you're happy to do. So if you didn't see that email, I know we all get a lot of emails. I just wanted to highlight that. Thursday, same time seems to be the vote so far. Yes. Me too! I can't wait, Laura. It's going to be so fun. And it's closer than this year was for MTNA. This year, 2023, was in Reno. So I'm really looking forward to it being a little bit closer, a little bit less of a time zone change for me, which is always appreciated. Every little helps. And there is a direct flight from Dublin. So we're very fortunate to have direct flights to a lot of places, which makes a big difference. Anyway, that's just the logistics. The main thing is it's going to be fun to meet lots of teachers, attend lots of great sessions, and put on a couple of sessions myself as well. So I talk about studio websites and making them make sense for your marketing. And then I have a group session, which I'm really excited about apps, which is with some wonderful, amazing teachers in a group. And then we also have a showcase for VMT. So I've got 3 sessions going on as well. So, yeah. It's going to be busy, which is why I need all the booth help. So, members, just check your email for that one. Now, last bit of news before we dive into today's topic is that Tanara is gone today. So if you somehow missed this, I know I've been saying it a lot, but I just feel like because, people get a lot of emails and might not be on Facebook and whatever. They can just miss stuff like this, which is why I keep saying it. It's disappearing today. So if you're there going into Tanara and going, why is this not working? Or why can't my students access the app? This is it. It's retiring. So if you need an option, Vivid Practice is there and you can take a look and set up a free account to test it out. But also, if you have any questions about Vivid Practice, I'm currently doing short calls with people to help them figure out if it's right for them or figure out how to set things up, etc. So you can make use of that too. Okay, so let's dive into the main topic, shall we? All right, so let me set the stage for this. This silent film piano festival, as I've called it, is going to be on this Sunday. Something we're running through the studio and for some external students as well. So what I'd like to do is just give you the full walkthrough as best as I can manage from the beginning of me thinking about planning this. Okay, so I'm going to take you all the way back to March. I was attending the MTNA conference in Reno, Nevada, and there was a booth there, which was they were called Silent Film Celebration, and it was this idea that was originally started, as far as I'm aware, this is the best of my knowledge, started out of the Utah MTA. So a group of teachers there started putting this on as part of the Music Teachers Association of Utah, and they've been running it, I believe, for a few years, and then recently they, or a couple of them, have decided to try and make these materials available to other teachers and sort of started a little business selling materials that are useful for running one of these events and helping people put it on. So I had the pleasure of visiting their booth, chatting to them about it, and then also attending their showcase session where they played through some of the pieces and explained how they set it up with 2 pianos, etc. So I'll give you the basic rundown of what they sort of talk about. Again, their website is silentfilmcelebration.com. Silent Film Celebration. So if you want to look them up, you can. And what they have on their website are they have for sale, I can't remember what they call them, like director's packets or something, but it's basically a breakdown of the scenes in certain films so that you have all the timestamps and everything. You don't have to work that out for yourself. And then they also sell music that you can use for it at various levels. And those are arrangements of a book of music that was put together in the 20s, I believe, for people doing this job of playing the incidental music in cinemas with silent films that were playing, right? Pianists who had to do this job. So that is what they do. And they explained in their session about how they kind of set it up. And one of the core things, which maybe I would have come to this conclusion myself, but it was great to just have the information right away. They have 2 pianos set up. That's the key to making this work. So the setup is you're playing a film and each student is tasked with playing the backing music for one scene. So the original person doing this job would have played the whole film. We're not asking students to do a whole film each. We're asking them to do one scene, which is, let's say, between 30 seconds and 1 minute and 30 seconds, something like that. So they're playing for one scene. For example, it starts when the guy gets on his motorbike and it stops when he gets off his motorbike, to give you an example. One bit of the film. And there's 2 pianos because scene 1, the student is playing at the piano. Scene 2, the student picks up at the other piano. And at the same time as they're playing scene 2, the piano 1, as we'll call it, piano A, that student who played scene 1 gets up, gets out of the way, and the student who's going to play scene 3 sits down, so that you're alternating back and forth between the 2 pianos. Hopefully I've explained that clearly. Obviously I don't have pianos here to show you, but hopefully you get the idea of what I'm saying. So that's one of the core facts I think you need to get out of the way and know, and they talk you through that. They talked us through that in that session at MTNA, and they talk about it on the website as well, I believe. So that's where I got the idea. And I started thinking, this would be really cool. I'd actually thought about this before, but not like 20 silent films, just films and some way of performing with a film or something. Like I had this as a vague, maybe one day we'll do this. But this started to take shape as, no, we'll do it like this pretty much, with some tweaks to make it our own. So I started to plan from there. And it just shows how it's worth at any of these conferences getting up at 8 a.m. and being on time for that first session. It is easier when you're jet lagged and you're waking up at 4 a.m. anyway, but it was worth it. I went to that session at 8 a.m. and it was probably the biggest takeaway that I had that was very concrete from that conference, that I went home and straight away was like, okay, let's see if we can do this. So let me know if there's any questions as I go through, but I'll walk you through my whole process. So I started to plan. And the first thing I did was I started to look at venues, because I know in Dublin, that's where things fall down. And that might not be the case where you are. Maybe, it's easy to get local businesses to sort things out with you and whatever. It is not easy to find venues for anything here, probably because our real estate is just a total mess. So I started looking at venues and I said to myself, okay, I wonder if I could contact some of the independent cinemas, so like the ones that aren't big chains. Not that I have anything against the chains, I just thought it would be easier probably to work with the private ones. So I got in touch with a few of them and said, hey, how much would this be? Would you let us do this? And how much would it be? Because I had no idea what they were going to say. I had a hunch it was going to be expensive, but I didn't know if it was out of our budget as expensive or just, a big considerable chunk of money that we could do as a business. Now keep in mind here that I'm running a studio with me and 3 other teachers. We have 70 students, so it's not like I have 20 kids. But so I got in touch with a few. Some cinemas were friendlier than others. I mean, they were all fine. They were all professional, but some were friendlier than others. And the friendliest, the easiest to deal with, who were absolutely lovely, is the best cinema in Dublin. So that just shows you something. So I've ended up going with them. They will not have been the cheapest, but from the prices I got back from other people, it wasn't a huge difference. It is going to be a big expense anyway if you're hiring a cinema. So I ended up going with them. Now, the reason that's extra awesome is we're playing silent films from the 20s. So we're playing 2 Buster Keaton short films. I'll talk more later about the films. But yeah, they're 2 20-minute films. And they're from the 1920s. One is 1920, one is 1921, as it happens. And this cinema originally opened in 1923. And in my childhood, it was an absolute wreck. It was horrible. Like this, it was kind of a joke to say you were going to go to this cinema. I don't want to be rude to them, but it's different people running it now. So it was, a mess. There was holes in the ceiling, like the roof. There was pigeons flying in, like sticky floors, the whole thing. It was a total mess. You basically went there if you didn't have another option in my childhood. Then it closed down, and then somebody bought it and restored it to its original, or something like the original 1920s glamour. So it is done up so lusciously, like it is just beautiful. It's all velvet armchairs and fancy sort of Art Deco kind of looking-ish, and it's just a 1-screen cinema, so like you're just renting the whole thing, and it's kind of like a theater, like there's a balcony level and stuff, so it's just the dream. It's absolutely the dream to do this event there, and it's the kind of thing where when I told my students we were going to do this, and I told them where it was going to be, which is the cinema's called the Stella, okay? I told them we're going to do this, and I said, guess where we're doing it? And they said, downstairs here with your projector, because we've done things there before, like in my living room, the projector. And I said, no. And they said, in a real cinema. I said, yeah. And they guessed another one. I'm like, no, no, it's not that one either. No, it's not that one either. And they would realize it was the Stella and just like gasp. It was so fun. Anyway, so that's where it's going to be. And it's not cheap, but it's worth it to go all out. If we're going to do this event and it's not going to be cheap anyway, we might as well spend that tiny little bit more and go with something that's really perfect for what we're doing. So, yeah, right? Do you remember? Probably not, Serena, because you grew up in a different part, right? But do you ever go to the Stella when you were younger? It was not a nice place to be. Anyway, yeah, so that's where I started. Got the venue, went there to meet with them. They were just as lovely as they'd been over the email and like really accommodating. Just a wonderful, wonderful group. And found a date that I thought would work. In terms of the cost, they have different rates, the way it works for them. This might not be the case for you, and you don't have to do this in a cinema, by the way. It was just the ideal for me. So they have different rates based on whether it's like a weekday morning, a weekend morning, or an afternoon evening. Because obviously they have to charge a lot more for the afternoon evening because you're cutting off all their revenue for that time. The weekday morning would have been the most affordable, but that only would have worked if it was during Halloween break. So I surveyed the parents in my studio and said, listen, give you a vague idea of what it is I'm trying to do here. It's going to be really epic. Here's when we could do it. It could be a weekday during Halloween break, as we call it, or it could be a Sunday morning or Saturday morning. Which of these could you do? And overwhelmingly, they wanted a Saturday or Sunday, and ideally Sunday. So that's what we went with, because I wanted as many students to take advantage of it as possible. So then I decided to limit the age. That's the next sort of step I took. Booked my venue, made sure it secured the date, and decided on my age. And for me, it's ages 7 and up. So we have younger students in my studio, but I thought, for this, no, it's not going to be a good experience for them. If you have a 6 or a 5 or a 4-year-old and they're in a dark cinema and you do your best to explain to them what it's going to be like beforehand, but really the chances of them balking at the last minute and just not doing it was too high. So I thought, okay, this is going to be ages 7 and up. And also if we have a 7-year-old who I think this might not be great for, I'm just going to have that conversation with the parent. So I decided on that, and then I made the announcement in our newsletter. So our newsletter goes out towards the end of May, and I put this in the newsletter as like our exciting thing that's happening next year. Photo of the inside of the Stella, it looked beautiful and all of that, and told them about it. Okay. Then I had to think about the films. Or along the way, I had to think about the films. Not that I thought about them at the last minute. But we're talking last May, and that's when I decided, okay, I have to finalise these films and sort this out. Now, if you are not where I am, if you are in fact in the US, then it is likely that the silent films you'll want to use are out of copyright. Copyright laws vary, and it's based on the country where you are, not the country where they originated, okay? So when I looked into this, I discovered we are going to have to pay to license the films here because our copyright laws are different. So, the silent film celebration people out of Utah, they were saying these are in the public domain. They're not for us. So just be clear on that distinction. If you hire a cinema, obviously they're going to make sure with you of what you're doing because they don't want to get in trouble. So anyway, we had to do that. And there's a company that we were able to hire them through, and actually the cinema sorted all that out because they deal with them a lot. So they're just adding that to our invoice. It's not a huge cost, but it's not nothing. So we did have to factor that in. So we're licensing 2 films off them. That means they provide the files in the correct format for the cinema. It's a file format I've never heard of before. So I'm glad they're doing that and we don't have to convert something. The cinema guys told me, well, they can convert it from like an MP4, but it takes a day to convert. I'm like, what? How does anything take a day to convert these days? Anyway, that was new information for me. So, secured the films. That wasn't too headache taking. I just had to find out where to license them, talk to the cinema about that. They said they would look after it. That's great. Now, hopefully all this works out the way I'm saying. As I said, this is on Sunday. This is a preview. Something might go wrong. We'll have to see what happens. But hopefully it's all going to go fine. So there was that. Now, here's where we get to my headache. And some of you who watched the show recently know that this has been a headache for me, which is sorting out the sound. So I'm not like an audiophile in terms of cables and speakers and nonsense. No, it's not nonsense. It's just, it's not something I'm super interested in. And I don't know a lot about it. I'm not a gigging musician. It's not something I have a lot of experience with. So I have had to go back and forth in terms of the cables we need and the setup. It all got sorted. That's all I'll say about that. And it's going to be different for every venue you use. So I'm not going to give you any advice. But I did get it sorted out. I will give you one piece of advice, which is if you're ever stuck for cables and what cables you should use, Thomann, which is a German music website, have a great support team who will actually help you figure out what cables you need. So they're really lovely. So that's thomann.de. Just if you're ever like, who do I even ask about this? That's one option. You can go to their support team. And then, obviously, I would recommend buying the cables from them at the end of it to be nice, but they do it as a free support service. It's not like you have to then buy the cables. So yeah, sorted out the sound, did a rehearsal of that. That meant lugging the 2 digital pianos in there, but we got it sorted. And then, okay, so along the way, around last May, June, is when I decided to open this up to other teachers. Now, I didn't publicize this hugely. I just mentioned it a couple of times in a couple of places, and in particular I emailed VMT members, Vibrant Music Teaching members, who I know are in Ireland. And, you know, Ireland isn't a very big country, so we don't have a very big population. So that was a few teachers, emailed them, and a few of them were interested. So we have 3 external teachers who've submitted students for this. Just a few students each, basically. And so it's largely our students from our studio, from Colourful Keys, but we do have a chunk of students that are external as well, which I believe just adds an extra fun element to it, and meant we charge a small fee for that, so that's going towards some of the cost of the venue. It's not covering it at all because I didn't want to charge too much. I really wanted people to participate and it to be open, not cost prohibitive for them. So, but it does help to offset some of that cost. So I opened it up to other teachers. I set up a simple form for that with a payment attached. And then I set the deadline for that as September 30th. So the silent film piano festival, our event, is this Sunday, which is November 12th. So the last possible date they could sign up was the end of September. Because obviously they then need to prepare their music for it. So anything under 6 weeks, I was like, that's silly. They're not going to be able to prepare adequately for the event if it's after that. So that was the deadline. And then that was the deadline for my own students as well, to let me know whether they were available. The parents to let me know whether the students were available. So I had a simple Google form for that, and they just filled out, yes or no. It's not like there's different times or anything. It's just one event. So just tell them when it is. If they're available, great. If they're not, that's sad, but there'll be another event. And then for all of our students, I went about assigning the pieces to the students. So we used some of the pieces from Silent Film Celebration, and they have these books, and we had purchased some of those. So we used some of those pieces, the simplified versions, but they now have an even easier level, although it's still not super easy. So for students who are really beginners, they weren't going to play like those authentic pieces. So what I had done was I got in touch with several independent composers, Jennifer Eklund, June Armstrong, someone else, a few different people anyway, who have ended up on our program, Samantha Coates as well, and Brock Chart. That's the 4 composers I got in touch with. and said, listen, would you mind, can you give me written permission for us to use your music in this event? And of course all of them said yes. I mean, why would they say no? But technically you do need that permission because it is a public event. It's in a public space. It's not just even parents in my studio, it's parents from other studios, etc. So I made sure to get the permission and assign students pieces that made sense for their level, and then, you know, get to work enforcing the practice or encouraging the practice, making sure they were going to be prepared. Some of them had started these pieces before, or they were pieces they already knew, and some were brand new, so the level was appropriate to that fact. In the midst of that, in October, I sent out an email for my students and to the other teachers who have submitted students for this, that they could purchase extra tickets. So the deal is that every student gets one extra seat. So they get a seat for themselves and a chaperone, essentially one person to come with them, one guest. So if they want anything more than that, like if the whole family wants to come or whatever, they had to purchase those tickets. I put them up for €15. To give you some context, seats in the Stella in general are €20. So that just gives you a frame of reference. They're slightly cheaper than the standard price of a ticket in the cinema. So it's a pretty good deal, but obviously we do need to make it make sense, some sense financially, claw back some of the money. But it was mainly as a way to make sure we had exact numbers because space is limited, and I wanted to assign the tickets to people. So I got them to purchase extra tickets, and then I started assigning the seating. So I got the seating plan image just from the cinema, and I've been just marking in the groups and trying to keep people together with the student they're coming with into the plan, and then keeping track of that on a spreadsheet as well. So I marked off on the visual and write down on the spreadsheet, you know, K1 and K2 or whatever their seats are going to be. And then adding on the extra tickets and moving people around as I need to try and keep people together. So at the moment, the ground floor of the cinema is full. So I put up a warning on the page for the extra tickets that if they purchase any from now on or this week, since a few days ago, they'll be in the balcony level, which is still, you know, it's still a good seat. You can still see and everything, but I prioritize those who bought tickets earlier. So that's some of the logistics. In the meantime, our students have been practicing their pieces, obviously. We've been giving them a simpler piece if they aren't getting there in time. You know, we've been keeping a close eye on that. And then starting to practice with the film. Okay, so they have their scene. Let's say it's from 2 minutes 37 to 3 minutes 47, something like that. And then I pull it up on my iPad and I put that on the piano and I start a little bit before their scene, and they need to know what it looks like at the start of their scene. So what's actually happening in the film and what's like this still image, if we could take one, that moment when you're supposed to start playing, what would that look like? And so they've been practicing again and again and again of coming in exactly when their scene starts and stopping when it stops. So they know those two moments of what those two elements look like, so that they can come in on time and stop on time. So the difference about this type of performance versus versus most other recitals is you're not going to finish your piece necessarily. You have to have a flexible approach based on time. Okay? So they have to prepare, okay, if it's if I'm playing slower than I expected to, than I planned to, and it's coming to the end of my scene and I'm nowhere close to the end, what am I going to play? Like practicing a cadence that you can just throw in there to sound like the end of your scene, even though it's not the end of your piece. Or if you have extra time, as is more likely because students play faster under pressure, which bit are you going to repeat? Okay, and then the other elements we've been practicing are, okay, if the person before you doesn't stop playing, you're going to just interrupt them. You're going to play, even though they haven't stopped, but it's the start of your scene, so you just start. If the person before you stops too early, then you're going to start early because it's a team effort and it's not their fault. Like, they stopped early, whatever. We're not going to blame them. We're just going to chip in and repeat some part of your piece so that we fill that time. Because the most important part is keeping the music going the whole time. Okay, so that's our goal. So hopefully that's what happens this Sunday, but we'll see. And then after they finish their piece, they need to get up quickly and quietly and go to the other side. So I've organized it that, this sounds like a lot, right? It has been a lot to put together. But when I say it all in one go, I'm like, whoa, there's so many elements here. Anyway, so in terms of like the paperwork I've organized, every student has a ticket that has their seats on it. So they'll get that when they come in, along with the program. That's the easy part because it's like a recital, it's a program, listed in order, all that stuff with their pieces and everything. And then I've also organized badge labels. They're just printed on address labels, and they say the student name and their scene number. So it says like Nicola Canton 1 or whatever my scene number is, because they're going to queue up beside the pianos, I should say, in order. So that's going to make it really easy for them to queue up in order. And then, scene 1 and 2 will be sitting at the piano at the start, 3 and 4 will sit down, and they move to the other side. So they're kind of, it's kind of a queue, really. So that's how that's going to work. And they need to get up quickly and quietly after they finish their piece and move to the other side. Hopefully they'll do that. As you can tell, I always whisper that to emphasize the quietly part. So we've talked about, don't rustle your sheet music, etc. Another reason why I had to make this ages 7 and up. There was no way I was going to get 5-year-olds to do this. Then this week I've been sending out reminder emails to the parents, letting them know, hey, it's on this Sunday, like, don't forget, you need to be there at this time. The film starts at this time and will be finished by this time. Parents always want to know when things are over in case they have other commitments. I think that's fair enough. So giving them a good idea of that. And also reminding them that if they need extra tickets, they have to purchase them, Now, my backup plan, if they arrive and they haven't purchased, they just arrive, they haven't read any of my emails, and they say, oh, I assume the whole family could come, or whatever, then they'll sit on the balcony level. We do have extra seating there. So, yes, exactly, Sheila. I've told them that. So if they're an odd number, they'll be sitting at piano A, let's call it, and an even number will be piano B. They're actually, piano A will be the Kawai, and piano B will be the Yamaha. They do sound slightly different, but hey, I'm not going to buy another digital piano just for this event. Good, I'm glad. Hopefully I've given enough detail to give you a good idea of how this is working. The practice has been interesting, and I think it's been a really good thing to prepare for my students. As we've said, it's very different. It's time-based, it's not piece-based. So they need to finish on time, they need to keep with the atmosphere. When I have, there's a couple of cases where I have buddy students or something that I put their scenes back to back so they could practice together. And we've actually done a little modulation at the end of one student's piece to go into the next. That's not essential. I'm not expecting it to all sound like super put together and professional or anything. Like, the pieces will sometimes sound a bit at odds with each other when one student takes over. I think that's fine. But where we have those opportunities, we have done that little, modulation thing to get to the next piece, or, making things match each other in certain ways. And it's been really fun. And it's been fun as well to see the approach of the other, the external teachers, all of whom I know, at least digitally, I know them to chat to online. So it's been interesting to see their different approaches. One of the teachers, a lot of her students are really beginners, and so they've composed their own pieces, and I think that's awesome. The composer's listed as them and their teacher, which is lovely. So they've composed something to match their scene from scratch. That's awesome. And then some have taken a piece that they can already play, more intermediate students, and then adapted that to suit the scene, and etc. So it's been really fun to see that as well, to see what other teachers do. Because I know how I manage things, but you can always learn from other teachers and how they do it. And I think a lot of the students are really excited. Some are nervous, of course, but I think it's going to go well. Our other little backup plan is one of the teachers who works here is the designated stand behind the piano and jump in if no one's playing anything person. So she's going to be standing right there. If a student like stops too early and the other one doesn't start, or if a student doesn't show up or something happens, she's going to jump in and, improvise a few chords and make up the extra time. So that's the plan. Okay, so I hope that's given you a good overview. Bit of a different show today as I talk you through this process and how it's been to set it up. But yeah, hopefully it gives you behind the scenes. Maybe it'll inspire you to try one. As I said, I'm going to come back next week with the after. With the lessons learned. Here's what I would have done differently. Here's what didn't work. Hopefully nothing major doesn't work, but you never know. These things happen. So my plan is to come back next week with that and let you know what I might do differently. Whether I'm thinking about doing this again, I've no idea. We definitely can't afford to do it every year. That's the honest truth. But maybe it becomes a biannual thing if it goes really well. Or maybe it's just a one-off and we just enjoy it for that. But yeah. I haven't gone through in terms of our camera recording and taking photos. That's all the same as I run my recitals. So that hasn't been too much to set up. But yeah, we'll definitely do a debrief afterward next week on the show, and I've got your votes for if we need to switch it, we'll switch to Thursday, so we'll go with that. It's not switching next week though, so don't worry. We'll stick with Wednesday show as long as we can, and then if I need to change, we'll change to the same time on Thursday. Okay, thank you all so much for joining me. I hope this was useful. I hope it was fun to hear about, and thank you for the well wishes that are coming in the chat. I'm sure the students will have a great time. I'm sure it'll go, it doesn't have to go perfectly or anything, but hopefully we'll all have a good time. And I'll tell you more about that next week. Bye for now.